Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, June 2nd, 2025 at 7 p.m. and we are in regular session tonight. Before we get going with our regular session, however, we have a public hearing. This public hearing is regarding a recommendation from the Athens City Planning Commission to rezone 111 Hooper Street from R1 and R2 to R3. If anyone is here this evening to speak on the rezoning of Hooper Street, you may come to the podium and state your name and your address and whether you represent a group, and you may have 3 minutes. I welcome you to the podium. Please.
Hi, Aaron Romero, 10 Nottingham Drive. I apologize if this is redundant, but one of the first issues I'd like to bring up and request be rectified is somehow my wife's and I address got omitted from the mailing list. So any correspondence we heard, we're getting secondhand from our neighbor who literally moved in last month. So I don't know what decisions have been made or whatnot, but I guess I'd like to request the following things be updated. With traffic at the intersection of Hooper and Nottingham, it's a blind corner, especially with speeders. In fact, last week my wife and I almost got hit broadside by that. So I would like to invite council who have, if they're familiar with the area or not familiar with the area, to bring a lawn chair and a speed radar and sit at the end there and take maybe hour shifts and then add that to when school starts, and then this property as well with that. And then also with that intersection, there's power lines and it's cut away. So basically the runoff comes down into that intersection and freezes. So at the bottom of that hill, you got a blind turn and ice. Every time it freezes for freeze thaw, so I'd like that to be taken into consideration as well. This with Hooper, and again I apologize if this is redundant. With Hooper, it's incredibly narrow, so I'd like to invite council to look up their records for how many times they've had to do work orders to repair landslides on Hooper with that property, because it's incredibly narrow and incredibly dangerous with no sidewalk. So basically my wife and I are watching students coming down from Monticello walking in the street. I mean, half the time if it's raining, we'll offer them a ride into town with that. The other issue is litter. At least once a month, my wife and I will walk down to Richland Avenue to pick up litter. And then if you walk up that way, so I would like to invite council to come and help us pick up litter, because basically the litter ends at Monticello because people are coming from Richland Avenue. So we're picking up beer bottles, beer cans, and fast food bags with that. So this addition, that's just going to increase. The property itself, it butts up to ours and our neighbors. So again, I apologize, we just don't know the details, but how much is that going to come in to oversee our property? My personal concern is we've had tenants in the past there walk the woods and stuff, which is fine, but then we hear voices and then we hear people screaming or falling because they've fallen in the creek that's on our property. So does that mean if they get injured on our property, if these are going to have kids and stuff, is that going to be put on us with that issue? So is there going to be some kind of artificial barricade with that? And then the property itself, it's kind of a half bowl. So the creek that's behind our property, that's where everything drains into. So is that going to be an increase of motor oil, antifreeze, and other litter to where that goes? And it basically, when it rains, it forms 2 or 3 different channels into that creek. And the flattest part of that property is the part that butts up against our property. I'm not a civil engineer, but odds would say that's probably where they're going to focus on first. So I would like to invite City Council to physically come and see the property, just so you understand what you're saying yes or no to. I would also like to invite council, the tree commission, and the Sierra Club to see just the amount of trees and the size of the trees that are going to get taken out. You know, I was here, I worked for the city when the cutaway there on 50, and I remember how upset everybody was with that. But yeah, it was an eyesore. But there's going to be a lot of foliage that's going to get destroyed, and that's going to push the wildlife over into our properties. With that, so the reason why I want to invite that, because one time when I worked for the city, it was my turn to sit in for the Parks and Rec board, and the board leadership were talking about $500,000 of this, hundreds of thousands of dollars that, and I kind of sheepishly raised my hand. I'm like, have any of you actually walked out to the places you're talking about? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, you think you oughta? So that's my invitation to council and the tree commission and the Sierra Club, is to physically see, you know, if the deal's done, the deal's done, but I would like these things to maybe be put in the, what are we gonna do about that? You know, so we don't have it, especially the traffic safety issue, because that really is, there's two lovely pine trees across the street from Nottingham on Hooper that you can sit and you can see how quick the cars come around, and that's just gonna add to that narrow road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Diana Marvel, and I am at 8 Nottingham Drive. And I think we're all here because the deal has not been sealed, that's the question that is being considered. And it starts with whether or not you decide to rezone an area that has been zoned R1 and R2 for single-family, two-family housing. It's a question about changing something that has been established, that new residents in that community like myself and residents that have been there 20, 30 years have come to expect. We chose to live in that area because it's a residential area where we can establish our homes in a beautiful area next to the green belt that Aaron just described. Putting in a massive development, which let's call it what it is. It's a business. You would be putting in a huge, sprawling business right next to our homes. And the issues that Aaron just described come with having a business there in that area. And it will impact everyone who lives on Hooper Street. It will impact everyone who lives on Nottingham. It's going to impact people on Longview, on Rock Riffle. It will irrevocably change that entire community area to change the zoning to multifamily housing. And, you know, I was at the meeting 2 weeks ago when Councilperson Swank shared a really touching story from his family about how everybody lives somewhere. And our somewhere is right off of Hooper Street. And I would just encourage you to please consider how the decision you make about rezoning will impact every single person who has already chosen to live in that area and to make that area their home. It is our community. It is our neighborhood. You know, talked about how wonderful it was to have Porch Fest in the East Side neighborhood and build community and see your neighbors. We want that too. Apartment complexes are important. You know, I'm not against having apartment complexes in this area. I just ask that you choose to build them in areas that are already zoned for that type of housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jennifer, 10 Nottingham Drive, Jennifer Romero, sorry. My husband already spoke, my neighbor spoke. I just want to add in there that with everything they brought, we already have high density housing there. We've got Courtyard Apartments, Summit at Coat Run, what used to be, the one across Richland, Carriage Hill. So we've already got a lot of high density in there. As my husband said, the road, Hooper Road, is not wide. You get up to Monticello Apartments and it turns into chip and seal. It's not a paved driveway. There is no sidewalks for people to walk on. So if you build this housing, and if it is for affordable housing, those people may not have access to vehicles, whatever. Walking is going to be dangerous. When we walk to do our litter pickup, we're walking in the roads and have to jump out of the road for traffic purposes. So please take that into consideration as well, that there's some safety things going on there, and we already have high density in our neighborhood, and that the noise from another additional housing complex would increase in that neighborhood itself as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Chris Hitchcock. I live at 267 East State Street, so I don't live in the neighborhood that is concerned right now. But I do live in Athens, and I am an Athens community member, and I'm concerned that there's this consideration of changing a zone from residential R1, R2 to a residential 3, to an R3 zone. People buy their homes in places for purpose. They check the zoning and they know, okay, this is meant to be single family housing, and this is where I want to invest my money. This is where I want to live. This is where I want to build community. They should be able to rely on that when they make their investments, their financial investments and their personal investments in somewhere, in their homes, in their communities. And this is pulling a switch. This is saying, okay, well, you bought it, but we're going to change that if you agree to do this, right? And it's pulling a rug out from under people who live there and who just want a community and just want a neighborhood, just like we talked about with Porch Fest. It's a different kind of community, right? But they're very much a community. Okay, it's different on the surface, right? It's very much a community. And to just say, okay, we're going to change that, that's not thoughtful for those people. And it's not thoughtful for their investments, right? And it's not thoughtful for Athens. There are places that are zoned for this type of business, right? And if I bought a home that was zoned for that kind of business, I wouldn't have a complaint, right? Because I knew where I was buying. But if we need to make these kinds of businesses, let's make them in the places that are already zoned for them, and not change people's lives and communities. We're a community-minded small town. And I think it's really important that we consider that and we hold to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm Rob Delich, live at 124 Morris Avenue here in the city of Athens. And I love how the Porch Fest has been invoked a couple times, as I'm the president of Athens Porch Fest at this point, but it's incorporated. So yes, community is important. One of the difficulties in our community, though, is a lack of housing. And we've already said no to a zoning change for another affordable housing project because there was some local opposition to the idea of having affordable housing, more dense housing, nearby people that already live there. Well, there is no place else to build. If we say no to this one, where's the next opportunity? Maybe somewhere on Columbus Road, out on the hinterlands, the Kershaw Green development. I think the reason that it went through as easily as it did. It wasn't even part of the city where it was built. So there was nobody living there anywhere near it. Is that how we're supposed to build all affordable housing out in the hinterlands where there's nobody living there? I don't think that makes any sense. Our comprehensive plan does talk about how to address these kind of issues, and it talks about building on the edges and densifying in those places. And this is exactly the kind of place that was described in the comprehensive plan to build affordable housing. This is not a large development. It's 50 or 60 units, I think is what it is. I can't remember the exact number, somewhere in there. It's not a large development. It won't have a large impact on both the built environment or traffic on the street that it would have to have a driveway onto. There may need to be some work done by the city to make sure that that road is suitable for the small additional traffic that it would receive. So I think that's the main argument I have, is that we need housing, and we need all kinds of housing, not just affordable housing. We need to densify, I believe, even neighborhoods like the Near East Side neighborhood. We need more housing there too. So I think everybody needs to become comfortable with the idea of adding housing and making general density, for the most part, in places where there's people already there. I agree with that. But I think we need to say yes to this development and allow it to move forward, which, by the way, doesn't mean that it's going to happen. It's dependent on a grant that's being awarded by the state to the developer to fund it. And if that doesn't happen, it won't happen anyway. But the zoning change, I think, is the first step. It has to happen to even consider the option for it to be developed. And then, as far as site plans have to be developed. They have to be approved by the Planning Commission and possibly by City Council. So site plans are going to help mitigate some of the environmental concerns that were talked about here as well tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in this public hearing for the Hooper Street recommendation from the Planning Commission?
A procedural question.
Mr. Swank?
A procedural question, sir, and perhaps the mayor can help with this. Don't put you on the spot. As our last speaker mentioned, this is a part of a process. If we're at second reading tonight, we will not be voting. We will be voting at the next business meeting. But at that point in time, it would need to go before the city for, what is it, Title 41 or Title 49 consideration? Title 41. Which would then, if I'm not mistaken, look very closely at many of the things Mr. Romero talked about and all of that, and only then and after all those boxes are checked would it move forward?
Don't hold me to that, but I think
Okay.
you're correct on that.
Okay. So there are, if this body does vote in favor of this, there is another level to address many of the things Mr. Romero talked about, and as well as environmental issues. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swank. Anyone else in the audience like to speak in this public hearing? Okay, thank you. We will call the public hearing to a close and move into our regular session of council. I'd like to start by acknowledging that here in Athens County, we live and work on land initially settled by and developed by earlier people, particularly the Shawnee and the Osage, and those identified through cultures commonly known as the Adena, Hopewell, and Fort Ancient. This acknowledgement reminds us of the importance of honoring history, people, and the planet as we work to improve our city's legacy. Our first order of business is to establish quorum. We have 6 of 7 council members present this evening, and we have quorum. The next item of business is disposition of the minutes for the regular session of City Council held May 19th, 2025. May I have a motion for approval of these minutes?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The minutes have been approved. Next, we have communications. I'm very happy to share that the government channel and the City of Athens are very excited to announce that the recent production of Athens City Hall, Stories to Tell, has received both a Communicator Award and a Telly Award this spring. This is our beautiful trophy with Jason Dudis's name right on the trophy as producer. Each of these National Media Awards recognize excellence, effectiveness, and innovation across all areas of communication. This Athens City Hall retrospective received a Communicator Award of Distinction and a Bronze Telly Award, both in the documentary categories, and was found to have exceeded industry standards in quality and achievement. Some of the other winners, for your knowledge of this, include ESPN, NASA, and WOUB. The Athens City Hall Stories to Tell documentary, which celebrates the history and 150th anniversary of this building, Athens City Hall, can be viewed anytime for free on the City of Athens website, the city's YouTube channel, and the city's Facebook page. I highly recommend you check that out. The government channel, Scott Thompson and Jason Schwartzoff, and Ryan Schwartzoff and Jason Dudis are proud recipients of this award. So congratulations. Do any other council members have any communications? Member Spielness.
Yes, I also have very good news, and since I've been involved with the Athens County Foundation Co-Create project to work on insecure housing issues, I'm very pleased to talk about HAPCAP, the Hocking Athens Perry Community Action Organization, received an additional $2 million to help combat homelessness. And this just was announced this past week. It's a wonderful opportunity to not only do what we had originally decided to do with the Sunset Motel, now it will be the Sunset Shelter, but it's going to provide enough funds to do almost everything that people had hoped to do. So I want to acknowledge that the mayor's been involved with this too and is quoted in there, and he may want to talk more about that. In any case, it's an opportunity. There was 3 other communities that also got some money for this state grant. It will provide for non-congregant housing, emergency housing. There's also going to be additional services and safe parking areas. I am so excited about this. It is wonderful. In addition to that, just to say that tomorrow there's going to be a discussion at the community center from 5:30 to 7 to talk about insecure housing and ideas and thoughts. It's sort of a community conversation thing. So we're going to be revealing after that what the results are, what the thoughts are, and that will help inform further services. So there's a lot of activities having to do with housing and helping folks who are really down and out. So it's some really good things for the city.
Any other communications? Yes, Member Wood.
Yeah, I got the pleasure to attend a rain garden workshop on Thursday put on by Teresa Caldwell from Athens Soil and Water Conservation and Steve Adams from the City Engineering. It was really informative, some of the things we can do to mitigate water, which was one of the first things that Sam told me was an issue when I started, and I had no idea how much that was going to be true. But I got to go to that and hear about some of the things that the city is doing to mitigate, and some of the things that we can do as individuals as well. Went with my mom. It was great. We had a lovely time. Bought a lot of plants. Highly encourage people to check out all the programming that Athens Soil and Water are doing. And, Teresa Caldwell mentioned some of the stuff that the city has done to upgrade our sewer and pipes that people don't necessarily hear about that help those issues mitigate. So it's really great to hear about those activities going on.
Thank you, Member Wood. And I'll just add to that every year, actually all year, the City of Athens, Ohio University, and the Soil and Water Conservation District meet to talk about our stormwater permitting process and how we try to keep pollution out of our storm drains. They lead directly to the Hocking River, so all of those issues are exacerbated as they reach the river. And yesterday and today, a Ohio University graduate student was working on a sidewalk painting above a storm drain near the Masonic Lodge on Carpenter Street. So if you're in that area, check that out. I think she was going to try to complete it today, and it's to bring attention to this idea that those drains lead directly to our river, and only rain goes down the drain. Any other communications? Yes, Member Clodfelter.
Well, I just wanted to give council and the community members who are here an update about something that Ben Ziff presented recently at a council meeting, which was a car fit initiative that was being done by medical students at the fairgrounds. And people could go and the medical students would look at how they're using their cars and if they fit right and if they know everything about their cars. And I decided to go, mainly because Ben said it would be beneficial for the medical students. And I was really quite surprised that 8 different medical students did something about my car. They were really trying to give as many of them exposure to doing this as possible. But and the students did seem to benefit. It was just really nice to see those young, motivated, intelligent people doing that. But I also learned some things about my car that I didn't even know. And they said that, I think they said there had been 14 people there before me, because I went after I got off work. So they helped 15 drivers quite a bit, and it just seemed like a really good initiative. And also, quick shout out to Amy Lipka, who has brought a group of really wonderful Slovenians to Athens on a grant that Ruth Dudding wrote to have them learn more about how we help our older citizens here.
Thank you, Member Clodfelter. Any other communications from city council members? Other elected officials? The Law Director's Office, Jesse?
No, thank you.
Auditor Hecht?
No report.
Treasurer Thomas? Mayor Patterson?
I just have a couple items to share with council. And I want to kind of echo a lot of what President Crowell mentioned about that Telly Award. It's a big deal. It's like winning an Academy Award, quite honestly, for television, production and television, period. So, props to the little government channel for being able to crank this out, and Jason put a lot of work into that, so I just have to mention that really quick. Just a couple other things to mention to council. In August, we are going to have a visitor, another international visitor who's coming here. It's one of the city council members from our partner city, Austro-Ukraine, is making the trip here, and I will give more details to council as the time draws closer. In terms of what the agenda is, it'll be approximately a week and a half that the individual is in the U.S. And likely 3 days, give or take, that they'll be spending with us. And so hopefully we can plan it to where, much like the rector of the National University Austro Academy came and presented to council when he was here many months ago. So I just wanted to throw that out there to council. I also want to mention the Voltage program, which is that turn in your 2-stroke lawnmower, weed whacker, leaf blower, whatever, and you can get basically a rebate, significant rebate. I was walking through one of our larger stores here in the city of Athens and noticed the prices of some of the electric lawnmowers out there, ranging from, $275 up to almost $400, probably even more out there. But the $250 rebate that you can get by disposing your 2-stroke, purchasing an electric lawn implement, videotaping yourself using it, so that the return policy, unless it's broken, you can't just turn around and return it and keep the rebate money that you receive. So there's requirements, but that program's still alive and well. So just wanting the public to know that. The other thing to share with council is, and I think we have a slide, Ryan, if you can throw that up there, or a PowerPoint. I just got this from AEP, actually from SOPEC, not from AEP, from Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council, which is our community choice aggregation, to where they were able to lock in a rate that is lower than the price increase that everyone has experienced. You'll see it on your June bill for your electric rate. AEP, when you compare the SOPEC rate to the AEP rate on that slide, you can see it's substantially less, which is great news for the citizens of Athens that are enrolled in the AEP or the the SOPEC product that's out there. And it's also good to remind everyone that, the SOPEC energy is 100% renewable. So it's not coming from a coal-fired power plant somewhere. So I wanted to share that with council because that's good news. One more item to share with council. We just submitted for our Soul Smart Platinum today. When I say we, Megan Jennings, our city planner, we have done everything that we need to make people wanting to put solar on their homes or ground mount in their yard somewhere so much easier than what was the process before, to where everything can be done online, the permitting can be done online. And so I'm hopeful. I've said this several times in the past, but it was on us to be able to sync up our software system with the software system that'll work with Soul Smart's, what they require of us. We were able to make that work. And so don't be surprised if we end up being recognized as one of the few cities in the nation that are recognized as Soul Smart Platinum for cutting through the red tape for people to put solar on their homes and take advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act, quite honestly, as long as that's still in play. We'll see how that rolls out. But that's all I have. Thank you, President.
Good news. Thank you, Mayor. Now, ordinarily, we move on to ordinances for third reading. However, we have no ordinances for third reading this evening, so I will move into ordinances for second reading. I will read the title and then check to see if there are any comments or questions. Ordinance 56-25 is an ordinance rezoning a 5.13 acres located at 111 Hooper Street from R1 and R2 zones to an R3 zone, introduced by Councilmember Swank. Ordinance 58-25 is an ordinance authorizing the Surface Safety Director to enter into an LPA, Federal Local Let Project Agreement with the State of Ohio, Department of Transportation, for the State Route 682-56 roundabout, project number 357, and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Spielness. Ordinance 59-25 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA Federal Local Let Project Agreement with the State of Ohio, Department of Transportation, for the rehabilitation of the Stimson Avenue Bridge, project number 358, and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Spielness. Ordinance 60-25 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA Federal Local Let Project Agreement with the State of Ohio, Department of Transportation, for the Columbus Road Shared Use Path, project number 365, and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Spielness. Ordinance 61-25 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA Federal Local Let Project Agreement with the State of Ohio, Department of Transportation, to upgrade ADA curb ramps in the city of Athens, project number 366, and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Spielness. Ordinance 62-25 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA Federal Local Let Project Agreement with the State of Ohio, Department of Transportation, for the East State Street Signal Improvements Project, number 367, and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Spielness. Okay, we will now move on to ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 63-25 is an ordinance amending the 2025 appropriation ordinance, authorizing the auditor to make interfund transfers, amending Ordinance 145-23 that authorized construction of the new fire headquarters, project number 346, and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember McCary. Is there a member of his committee that, yes, Member Thomas.
Thank you. We discussed this pretty lengthily last week, so I will read through kind of the general highlights of what's changed, and then we can have any discussion as needed. Section 1, 2025 appropriation ordinance hereby amended by appropriating from unappropriated balances the following sums: $350,000 to Safety Services Fund 206, $30,000 to Capital Improvements Fund 580, and increasing total appropriations by said amounts. In Section 2, amended by decreasing General Fund Fire 101.208, Supplies and Services by $27,000, and increasing General Fund Fire 101.208, decreasing General Fund 101.120, other administrative supplies and services by $25,000, and increasing General Fund 101.120, other administrative services. Skipping down into Section 4, amends hereby authorized to expend up to $14,352,000, and the other big change, additional change is from $9 million to $9,932,000 from Safety Services Fund Fire 202.208. Those are all the changes, and is there any discussion or questions? Member Swank?
Just one question. The $500,000, in reviewing the minutes that Clerk Walker sent to us today, thank you, very comprehensive they are. $530,000 from the capital improvements, already $500,000 appropriated. My question revolves around, what was this appropriated to pay for originally?
Mayor, can you answer that, or Auditor?
I feel like Andy answered that last week, but I don't remember.
He just talked numbers. What is this? Just $500,000 we put into that line item of the budget, thinking, well, we might have something to spend it on?
Well, we have done that before. So if a major capital expense came up, such as a large vehicle that broke down and we needed another one right away, then we already had money appropriated instead of waiting to go through council and then the process of getting the vehicle or making the land improvement or construction improvement that we needed. So,
but something of that nature, we would have to bring it before council anyway if we were going to spend $500,000, permission to bid and so on and so forth. I guess my question is, has it been the practice of this body, and by body I mean council and the city, to appropriate funds of this amount with no project attached to it?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I think one of the things we thought we might need this for was for the armory.
Okay.
We don't usually probably appropriate that much.
That's $500,000.
I know.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. Okay, that was the only question I had. Thank you.
Mayor?
Councilor Swank, we'll get you an answer.
Okay.
For sure. I also think that it may have, the auditor is correct, it may have been for the armory. It could also have been knowing that we were purchasing and have on order a new pumper truck, which that's a very expensive piece of apparatus. But we know that that's not going to be delivered until, I believe, 2026, 2027.
Wow.
But there's a down payment or things like that can come up or do come up. And so, but we'll get you a firm answer on what that $500,000 appropriation, why we budgeted that anyway.
Yeah, because my greatest fear is that we budgeted for a specific item which hasn't been identified, and will we have to forego that? But it sounds, so yeah, I'll be interested to hear the information. Thank you. Yeah.
Member Wood?
Yeah, I'm still really bothered by what we heard last week, that basically the administration took on $200,000 of projects without approval and just added them into the bill. And the answer we got was pretty flip. And I'm just hoping that we can get some more clarity on, were those actually approved by council, those activities? What was the decision-making process that happened that all these added projects were done without council approval?
Well, to your question, and I wasn't here, so I don't know what the quote-unquote flip answer was to you that came from the Service Safety Director. But, when I was speaking with him earlier today about the issue at hand. The thing that he had indicated to me was that this was an oversight, that there was a lot going on with not only the change orders, 3 significant change orders that came through. One was the fitness court. The other was the art walk that is down there. And then the third one was the expansion of the parking lot area to where we could basically run it all the way down to May and Morris Avenue. And then there was the issue of the city of Athens being victim to a scam of $722,000. And all those things going on, and, which sucked up a lot of time and energy and attention with things going on. And again, it is believed to have been an oversight as the additional expenses, not to mention the open PO that the fire chief had available, to where there was furnishings with a cap. $250,000 was all that we were authorizing for furniture expenses. And then there's things that are going to be reimbursed back to the city. There's the FEMA funding. There's the equipment that Director Stone may have mentioned to you, the fitness equipment inside there, which we'll get a rebate on, or a refund on. So I believe that it was a constellation of things all happening together, with the change orders, with the city being victim of the scam. It wasn't intentional to have this over expensing on that project, but it happened.
Member Spelnis.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong here, my colleague here, and that was, I believe there was an explanation that there was an ordinance passed some years ago that required 1%, I believe it was, for art purchases for large projects. So if that was already in there,
Director Stone indicated that this is additional to that 1%, but that is not covering that.
so it was 1% plus, you're saying? That's what he told you?
The 1% was the number that's already baked into the 14 million. The 200,000 is exceeding that number.
Okay, that wasn't clear, thank you.
Yeah.
I was just going to add that what you just said, that this was, the art walk ended up costing more than anticipated once they started the project, is what I believe you said. So the 1% and then the plus, what Michael just, or what Member Wood just said.
Member Swank?
Yeah, the additional number on the art was $63,000. The one that got me, though, was the sport court. And the city's contribution to that was $192,000. And back when I was participating in the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Board, I must have had my ears clawed, because I was under the impression we were getting that as a grant. We got about $35,000, but we ended up spending $192,000 of city funds on that, on the sport court down there.
Additional comments or questions on this ordinance from city council members? Anything to add? Administration, anything to add, Mayor? Would the public like to ask any questions or comment on this? Okay, moving on to ordinance 64-25. This is an ordinance amending ordinance 121-24, authorizing 2025 staffing levels, and it's introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me read the pertinent section. Everyone should have a copy on their computer. Section 1, authorizing staffing levels in the mayor's office, are hereby amended to read as follows. And there's a list of 8 or 9 positions that are in the mayor's department. The very last one, general mayor, DEIA/training coordinator, is crossed out and will be amended with the following: community engagement and accessibility coordinator. And the rest of the original ordinance stays the same. So it's been read for the first time.
Thank you, Member Reisner. Any comments or questions from City Council on this ordinance? Member Spelnis.
Yes, I reached out to John Schmeeding, who is very active in the community with issues having to do with community what is his exact title anyway? I've forgotten.
Mediator.
Okay, okay. Well, yes, he did that too. So in any case, he's done a lot. So I reached out to him and asked him about this position, and he wrote back, and I think I've already got a copy of this. I understand that Athens City Council may be discussing the new community engagement position tonight or in the near future. I want to express my strong belief that this position is crucial for the city at this time. Lacey Rogers has built relationships with many individuals and organizations working to better our community, and we need to build on that work. Because Ohio University, as he pointed out, has cut back dramatically, obviously, on DEI programming that benefited students and townspeople in the community. So he feels that this position is very important in its revised configuration. So I thought I would share that with all of you, and it's part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Spelnis. Other comments or questions? Member Swain.
Mayor. I don't want the job. No, it's just kidding. Let me dig a little deeper. I'm ready to retire again for the third time. We got the minutes today. I was reading through these, and this was after I'd watched the video from last week a couple times. And something jumped out at me, and I'm laboring with this in all honesty and all forthrightness. Last week, Member Spelnis asked, and I'm going to read from the minutes. Member Spelnis asked if the $27,000 being transferred from the fire department budget will affect fire operations. The city service safety director said this amount came from supplies, not personnel. Noted there is a sunset clause on the increase in firefighters associated with the FEMA grant to provide for 3 firefighters for 2 years. If the income tax levy had passed, he would have asked to keep those positions, but will no longer make the request since the increased income tax was not approved by the voters. I labor with what I'm reading, that on one hand, when this FEMA grant's done, we're going to lose 3 firefighters, our public safety officials. Yet at the same time, we're renaming, and one could make the case, adding a position. And I weigh, what is more important to the town? Public safety officials or the community engagement accessibility coordinator? Because I would contend that right now, each and every member sitting up here does a lot of community engagement, not accessibility coordination, but community engagement. I hadn't been in this position a month, and I got a call from a person on the Near East Side wanting me to mediate a dispute between that individual and their neighbor. They'd called the police out 3 times, and on the 3rd visit, the police officer says, "Why don't you just call your council person?" And they did. And believe it or not, the first person I thought of to help do this was the aforementioned John Schmeeding. And he got involved, and he worked it out. Shortly thereafter, I got another call from a resident not too far from Mr. Delich over on Morse Avenue. Person couldn't sleep at night. And the reason they couldn't sleep at night is the lights from the bank came through their windows at such a high intensity that it was like noon at midnight. I called the code office. The code office went down and found out 2 things. The wrong lights had been put in, and they were pointed at the wrong angle. They fixed them, and I got an email from the resident. I've never slept so well in my life. 3rd example, the following month, you get a call from an 80-some-year-old man saying, "I don't normally do this, but I need to stick up for my 55-year-old son." Lives on Hudson Avenue. Lives in a block on Hudson Avenue where he's the only driveway. And many times people will park literally in front of his driveway, simply thinking that the whole street is a curb. And one time, they parked in front of his driveway when he and his son had tickets to go to all places, an Ohio State football game, and couldn't get out of the driveway. Well, I went down to check it out, and lo and behold, one of our street crew was coming by, and I said, "Do you have any yellow paint?" The guy said, "No, but I'll go back to the shop and get some." Went back to the shop, came out, painted the driveway yellow so you could see, and they've had no problems since. And my guess is every one of the members of council up here, the mayor, treasurer, law director, we all do community engagement and community outreach. So again, I come back to the point, losing 3 firefighters when this grant's up, at the same time we're creating another position. And I'm struggling with that a little bit.
Other comments or questions from city council members? Member Clodfelter.
Like Member Swank, I would also be very sorry to see us lose 3 firefighters, but this engagement position is not a new position. It's just a reclassification of it, so there's no extra person being hired.
Sir?
Just a minute.
Okay.
Member Thomas?
I mean, I had the same comment, and, I mean, they're different budgets. They're not, I wouldn't say this is an apples to apples comparison. And those positions, if I recall, were only added because there was a grant, which has been a while, but I think that's how those 3 positions got added, so I think that was just a different discussion entirely. But yeah, this is just a reclassification of this position's not really needed as much where it is now, and that, as far as I'm aware, this person's already been moving into this type of engagement with the community, and I think we hear a lot of wanting more communication and more engagement between the city and the community, and also between our committees and commissions and, you know, the administration and council. So I would agree that this is a reasonable and easy change.
Thank you, Member Thomas. Member Swank.
It is the same budget. This is general fund, personnel. And if we didn't have this position, that is money that could be saved to help fund those new firefighters when the money runs out. Now, we were smart because we only added 3 people with grant money. There were school districts all across the country that took their money from the federal government and hired lots of personnel, and now they're finding out they don't have the money to pay for them. But when we were talking about the income tax, we said if it did not fail, we would look at everything, and there might need to be some cuts, and we enumerated some. And to me, if we could save this money here, keeping those 3 firefighters on would be very, very important. But again, I've labored over this all day long since we got these things, and I'm not sure if there's a right or wrong answer, but it is a concern.
Any other comments from city council? Moving on to city administration, Member Hecht, Auditor Hecht.
Well, I just want to clarify, Member Swank isn't wrong that we might not be able to hang on to those 3 extra firefighters at some point. However, at this point, this ordinance only, and also Member Thomas is right, I think we're talking about the mayor's budget and the fire department's budget. They're in the general fund, but they have their own budgets. And so the only amount of money that we're taking out of the fire department budget is $27,000. That would not save those firefighters anyway. We're taking the money from capital fund, we're taking it from internal administration, we're taking it from 206 interest, which is the safety services levy. We're getting money from the insurance company, and I don't know, I forget something. But anyway, that's the lineup on where we're getting this money.
That's the previous ordinance. That's the previous ordinance. We're talking about 64 now.
Okay.
I think just addressing the fire department budget,
Well,
just saying that.
that's the thing, you were saying that, you know, this is a new position, but it's not. And we're not, you know, we're not there where we have to, you know, let those firefighters go yet. And we hope it won't happen. But it's just, it's a possibility. But, yeah. As far
Mayor?
as cutting back that budget that pays for them, we're only using $27,000 on this.
Thank you, Auditor. Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. And Councilmember Swank, I appreciate your perspective on things, on this issue in particular. And I'm glad you alluded to the school districts and what they're having to face right now. For me, it was understood, well understood, by our fire chief and everybody in the fire department that this is a grant, and this grant lasts for 3 years, or whatever the time frame was for this particular grant. And at the end of that grant, money's gone. The plan was, among other plans, was we will be having retirements moving forward in time, so therefore these new firefighters who are coming on under this grant will, have gone through the academy, will have gone through their supervised, their year-long supervision, and then they will become then firefighter ones moving forward in time, which is great. And then as they mature and understand the job and are proficient at what they're doing, and then we're gonna have the retirements, that basically they would fulfill or fill those retirement positions as they become vacant. I was purposeful with ARPA, I was purposeful with other funding that we had coming in, other municipalities weren't. And I'll share the same story you did about teachers, or K through 12 education system, is that those cities now are recognizing, hey, things didn't work the way we were hoping to, and I'm gonna have to come, January or December of 2026, I'm gonna lose those positions that I was hoping to find revenue coming from somewhere else to keep those positions on board, and they can't, and they're not, they're gonna lose them. The auditor is correct, we are looking to tighten things everywhere that we can. And we do anticipate having, some retirements. We're gonna see them in a lot of departments. So when there are firefighters that retire in the near future, then we can hold on and let that person retire, backfill with one of the new, younger firefighters. But, to the auditor's point, and you guys, know this because you approve it every year. There's the mayor's budget, there's the water department's budget, there's everybody's budget out there. And this position is not creating a new one, as I think we all recognize it is. Transitioning to dropping the position, creating a new position because of the responsibilities and what that person has been doing is way more now public facing, which in my opinion is a real asset to the city of Athens, to have someone whose sole purpose is to be public facing and responsive. And I agree with you, your comment earlier, Councilmember Swank, about being a connector. I'm a connector, I think we're all connectors at the end of the day, but are we all proficient and specialized in some of the ways that Lacey Rogers is? And I would contend the answer is not necessarily, or no. But again, I appreciate all the remarks around this, but I think it would be very short-sighted to think that, let's not have this position and hopefully have this to where maybe part of a firefighter could continue on in this program, because, look at the pay scale between the two, a firefighter versus the pay grade of this particular person.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone from the audience like to speak to this? Okay, moving on. Ordinance 65-25. This is an ordinance amending Ordinance 37-25, the 2025 appropriation ordinance, 115-24, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. 65-25 is an amendment to the 2025 appropriation ordinance 115-24. The amendment clause is put near the bottom of section 1, which reads as $15,588.83 to Internal Service Fund 865, transaction code 600, for transfer and increasing the total appropriations by said amount. And that's it.
Thank you, Member Reisner. Any comments or questions on this ordinance from City Council members? Auditor, Treasurer, Mayor, audience members? Seeing none, we now move on to Ordinance 66-25, an ordinance granting a special right-of-way use permit at 75 Kimes Lane to maintain existing signage in the city right-of-way at US 50 and North Blackburn Road, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
Last week, Member Thomas did a great job of explaining this very complex thing that's before us today. In all seriousness, she did do a great job of that, but it's simply granting another 7-year right to use an existing sign. And the sign, as was pointed out last week, conforms to all the rules and regulations established in our code. The special right-of-way permit is personal in nature and will be in effect for a maximum of 7 years.
Thank you, Member Swank. Any comments or questions on this ordinance? Auditor, treasurer, mayor, audience members? Seeing none, we move on to announcements and other business. Are there any announcements or other business this evening? Seeing none? We will be having a special session next Monday evening. We will meet in committee, but we will also have a regular session of council next Monday, July 9th. We now have an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that were not covered on tonight's agenda. If anybody would like to speak, please come to the podium, and you may have 3 minutes. Seeing none, I would take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
8:01.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. We are adjourned at 8:01 PM. Thank you.